Hello everyone, and welcome to my bold and beautiful gossip channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Brooke Logan had survived decades of heartbreak, betrayals, shattered marriages, and love triangles that would send any ordinary person running for the hills, but nothing, and absolutely nothing, prepared her for the moment when her own daughter, Hope Logan, stepped forward with a trembling voice and dropped a secret so explosive it ricocheted through the Forrester mansion like a detonation. It began on what should have been a calm, relatively uneventful afternoon. Brooke was waiting in the grand living room, sipping tea and reviewing designs from Ridge, unaware that Hope had been pacing upstairs, rehearsing her confession 1,000 times over as guilt gnawed at her insides. The tension in the air was nearly visible when Hope finally descended the staircase, her hands shaking, her breath shallow, as Brooke immediately sensed that something far more serious than a design flaw or a Liam argument was about to come out. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you," Hope whispered, and suddenly the room contracted around them as Brooke placed her cup down, bracing for impact. She had seen Hope distraught. She had seen her frantic, but she had never seen her pale with the kind of dread only a life-altering revelation could create. When Hope confessed her secret, one steeped in betrayal, longing, and a choice she feared would tear her family apart, it hit Brooke like a blunt force emotional blow. She blinked rapidly, her breath hitching, trying to process every syllable, but the shock was too overwhelming, too destabilizing, and before Hope could even reach out to steady her, Brooke's world went dark as she lost consciousness and collapsed to the floor. Hope's scream echoed through the house as she fell to her knees beside her fainted mother, tears streaming in panic, knowing she had not only shattered a boundary, but possibly her relationship with Brooke forever. The confession was the culmination of months of hidden tension, forbidden temptation, and a secret so incendiary that if it reached Ridge, Steffi, or even Thomas, it would ignite every unresolved battle the Logan and Forrester families had shelved in hopes of maintaining fragile peace. It all began when Hope, still raw from heartbreak and emotional exhaustion, spiraled into a moment of vulnerability, one that led her into the arms of someone she should never have touched. She had promised herself she would forget it, bury it, push it deep beneath the surface, but the guilt festered and seeped into every interaction, especially as Brooke began hinting that something felt off with her daughter. Brooke, being Brooke, suspected trouble long before Hope admitted it, but she never imagined the scale of the secret Hope carried like a stone in her chest. When Hope revealed the truth, that her heart had betrayed her better judgment and her actions had threatened to reignite rivalries that once split the Forrester family in two, Brooke realized this wasn't simple drama. This was a secret that could destroy reputations, relationships, and the delicate balance Ridge fought to preserve. The fainting spell became the catalyst for the chaos that followed. Ridge, rushing home after hearing what happened, demanded to know what could possibly knock Brooke unconscious. Hope froze, paralyzed by fear, knowing Ridge's reaction could reshape the future of the entire family. Meanwhile, Steffi Forrester, who always suspected Hope was hiding something, smelled blood in the water and wasted no time preparing herself to weaponize any new information to protect her family and, of course, Thomas. And Thomas, unknowingly at the center of this emotional storm, remained blissfully unaware that the woman he still loved had just confessed a truth capable of dragging him back into darkness or pushing him toward redemption, depending on how he received it. Brooke, once revived, found herself grappling between maternal loyalty and disbelief. She couldn't ignore the devastation in Hope's eyes, and yet she couldn't comprehend how her daughter could have crossed such a dangerous line. Hope cried, desperate to explain, saying her heart had been confused. Her grief over Liam's collapse and her guilt over Thomas's devotion had clouded her judgment until she made a choice she instantly regretted. But regret didn't erase consequences. Brooke warned her that the Forrester family, particularly Steffi, would never let this go. Hope braced herself as Brooke, still shaken, insisted they keep the secret for the moment, if only to prevent another war between the families. But secrets on the bold and the beautiful never stay buried. The fallout expanded rapidly as word leaked that Brooke fainted after hearing something devastating from Hope. Donna and Katie demanded answers. Carter became suspicious. Taylor grew concerned that Brooke's health scare was tied to stress involving Ridge, and even Eric, despite his own struggles, asked if he should intervene before another family implosion unraveled everything. Meanwhile, Steffi cornered Hope, her eyes sharp with accusation, insisting she deserved to know what Hope told Brooke. Hope's hesitation only fed Steffi's fury. After all, Steffi had endured years of chaos from Hope's emotional entanglements with her brother. What Hope didn't know was that Steffi was already connecting dots, recalling every look, every slip, every subtle tension, forming a conclusion that could destroy Hope's credibility forever. And just when Hope thought she had reached rock bottom, Liam entered the picture, still weak, still recovering, but emotionally raw and yearning for clarity. Rumors had reached him that Hope had been distant long before his medical crisis, long before their most recent breakdown, and he wanted answers. Hope's heart shattered as she realized her confession to Brooke might soon ripple into every corner of her life. Brooke urged her to stay quiet, at least until Brooke could speak with Ridge privately, but time was running out. Ridge began demanding answers with a level of intensity that made Brooke fear that if she didn't soften the blow carefully, he would turn on Hope, and by extension, her. But the real ticking time bomb was Thomas. When he overheard a fragment of Brooke and Hope whispering about a mistake, his mind immediately jumped to the worst. He confronted Hope, eyes blazing with betrayal, demanding to know if she had been hiding something that involved him. Hope froze again, unable to answer, knowing whatever she said next would determine the course of their entire relationship. The tension reached a fever pitch when Steffi stormed into the room, announcing she knew what the secret was, and that she wouldn't let Hope cover it up any longer. Brooke's fainting episode had signaled to everyone that this was no trivial confession. This was something explosive, something inherently dangerous. Ridge, hearing the raised voices, stepped between them, insisting no one speak until Hope was ready. But Hope, trembling, realized she had no strength left to shield herself from the truth. She admitted that her secret had consequences she never intended, that her heart had been tangled in confusion and guilt and longing, and that she had broken a promise she once made, to Liam, to Thomas, and to herself. Brooke, still pale and shaken, stepped forward to protect her daughter, but the room erupted as Steffi insisted she wouldn't let Hope manipulate Thomas again. Ridge demanded calm, but emotions were too high, voices rising, accusations flying. Everything was unraveling faster than Hope could keep up. Brooke's fainting spell became the symbolic center of the chaos, proof that Hope's secret was big enough, dangerous enough, to physically knock someone off their feet. And as spoilers tease, the aftermath will only grow more explosive. Lines will be drawn. Loyalties will crumble. Ridge will question whether Brooke withheld the truth. Thomas will either spiral or demand a future with Hope, depending on what she reveals. Liam will confront her once he gains strength. And Steffi, she will pounce, with the ruthless determination only a Forrester protector can wield. Brooke's collapse might have lasted only minutes, but the shockwave of Hope's confession is just beginning. The bold and the beautiful is about to explode with betrayals, heartbreak, and confrontations that threaten to reshape every relationship on the canvas. And as spoilers indicate, nothing and no one will be the same once Hope's secret detonates across the Forrester and Logan families. But even as the emotional dust began to swirl around the Forrester estate, Brooke Logan, still fragile from her fainting spell, felt a deeper fear growing in her chest, a fear that what Hope confessed was only the beginning of a catastrophe far larger than anyone realized, because the secret was not merely about a mistake, a moment of weakness, or even a forbidden attraction. It was tied to a chain reaction that connected Liam's medical crisis, Thomas's emotional stability, Steffi's rising paranoia, and Ridge's suspicions that something inside his family was about to fracture beyond repair. The more Brooke replayed Hope's trembling confession in her mind, the more she felt physically ill, because Brooke understood better than anyone that one revelation often leads to another, and Hope's guilt went far beyond romance or heartbreak. It carried consequences that reached into the very core of the rivalry that had shaped the Logan-Forrester dynamic for decades. Hope, meanwhile, wandered the halls of the mansion like a ghost, terrified of opening her mouth again, knowing that every person she passed held a piece of her future in their hands. She wanted to run away, to disappear until everything settled, but she also knew running would only feed Steffi's accusations and Ridge's fears, turning the secret into ammunition for anyone eager to twist it for their own agenda. Brooke tried desperately to regain control of her emotions, but flashes of her collapse kept replaying in her mind. The moment her knees buckled, the sensation of the room spinning, the cold floor beneath her as Hope screamed her name. It haunted her because Brooke wasn't the type who fainted easily. She had endured affairs, scandals, paternity scandals, betrayals that would have crushed anyone else, and still she'd stood strong. But what Hope revealed hit her maternal core, igniting not only worry for her daughter's future, but dread about what this revelation would unleash once it reached the ears of those who already doubted Hope's intentions. Ridge hovered protectively near Brooke after she regained consciousness, but even his presence couldn't calm her racing thoughts, because she knew Ridge suspected that her fainting spell was linked to something involving Thomas. For Ridge, Thomas was always a pressure point. His son had come so far, worked so hard to rebuild his life, and the thought of Hope's actions undoing all of that progress would devastate him. Brooke could already see the storm brewing in Ridge's eyes, the quiet but dangerous intensity he carried when someone he loved was threatened. If Ridge discovered the truth the wrong way, the fragile reconciliation between the Forresters and Logans would shatter, dragging Hope into a battle she wasn't prepared to fight. Hope tried to find solace in the quiet garden outside, but even there she felt trapped between guilt and terror. She thought about Liam, recovering, confused, emotionally raw, and how much pain she had already caused him. She thought of Thomas, whose heart she had unintentionally entangled yet again by allowing her own emotions to slip into dangerous territory. And she thought of Brooke, who had fainted because the secret was simply too big, too devastating. Every breath Hope took felt heavier than the last. She wondered if she had made the wrong choice by confessing, if keeping the truth buried would have spared her mother the shock and the family the impending chaos. But deep down, she knew secrets always surfaced, and the longer they remained hidden, the more explosive the fallout. Inside the house, Steffi continued pacing like a lioness preparing for a strike, her icy eyes narrowed and her voice sharp with determination. She could feel the truth dancing just out of reach, and she refused to let Hope control the narrative, or manipulate Thomas yet again. She had spent too many years watching Hope's emotions wreak havoc on Thomas's life, and she would not stand by while her brother became collateral damage in another Logan scandal. Steffi's instincts told her that the secret was romantic in nature, perhaps even scandalous, and she was more than ready to expose it, even if that meant dragging Hope into a confrontation she wasn't prepared for. When Steffi cornered Ridge, suggesting that whatever Hope told Brooke involved Thomas, Ridge's jaw tightened, and Brooke, overhearing their conversation, felt the familiar dread rising again. She knew she couldn't protect Hope forever, but she needed more time to find the right words, the right moment, and the right strategy to keep the family from tearing itself apart. Donna and Katie soon arrived after learning that Brooke had fainted, bombarding her with questions and worrying over her like two protective sisters who refused to believe she was fine. Brooke tried brushing it off, but her shaky voice and pale complexion betrayed her, and Donna, ever the emotional one, began unraveling as she insisted Brooke tell them what Hope had said. Katie, more logical but just as concerned, began piecing together the clues. Hope's recent emotional withdrawal, the tension between her and Steffi, the whispers about Thomas's unresolved feelings. Katie warned Brooke that withholding the truth could make things worse, especially if Steffi got to it first, but Brooke insisted she needed time to figure out how to protect Hope. Donna mentioned that Liam had been asking questions about Hope's strange behavior, and Brooke felt a stabbing pain in her heart, because Liam, the one person who loved Hope through all her flaws, was about to be blindsided. Meanwhile, Thomas returned to the office and sensed immediately that something was wrong. Normally, Hope's presence was calming, But recently she had seemed distant, haunted, emotional in ways that sent him spiraling into confusion. He replayed every moment they shared over the past few months, trying to identify what he had missed. When he overheard Zend and RJ whispering about Brooke fainting, his gut twisted with fear, because he knew Hope and Brooke had been together at the time. The idea that he might somehow be connected to the secret made him sick with worry. He raced to find Hope, cornering her near the terrace where she was trying and failing to steady her emotions. His voice cracked with fear as he begged her to tell him whether her confession to Brooke involved him, and Hope's silence, her tremble, her tears, her inability to meet his eyes, only confirmed his worst suspicion. Thomas felt his chest constrict as he realized Hope's guilt might be linked to something she had been hiding from him, something that could crack open old wounds he had fought so hard to heal. Hope's lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but Steffi appeared behind Thomas like a storm cloud ready to erupt, her expression hardening as she crossed her arms and accused Hope of manipulating Thomas again. Ridge entered moments later, demanding answers as tension exploded in the air. Voices overlapped, accusations, pleas, demands for truth, until Brooke rushed into the room, breathless and trembling, begging everyone to stop. The room fell into a stunned silence as Brooke, still fragile from her fainting episode, tried to shield Hope while also calming Ridge before his temper ignited. Ridge demanded Brooke tell them what the secret was, but Brooke hesitated, torn between the man she loved and the daughter she needed to protect. Spoilers tease that Brooke's hesitation will create catastrophic misunderstanding because Steffi will interpret the silence as confirmation that Hope has hurt Thomas again, pushing her to take drastic measures. Meanwhile, Thomas, seeing Hope cry but not speak, will believe the worst, that she did something unforgivable, something that could break him. Liam, upon hearing whispers that Hope caused Brooke's collapse, will confront Hope in a moment that will leave both of them shattered. And Ridge, struggling to stay composed, will grow angrier the longer Brooke protects Hope's secret, fearing that whatever the truth is will damage Thomas beyond repair. Brooke tried to speak, but the room's pressure threatened another fainting spell. She saw the fear in Hope's eyes, the fury in Steffi's, the heartbreak in Thomas's, and the confusion in Ridge's, and for one terrifying moment Brooke feared that no matter how carefully she guided this confession, the aftermath would still destroy them all. Hope finally whispered that she never wanted to hurt anyone, especially Thomas, but her voice broke before she could continue, and Steffi immediately accused her of hiding an affair, sending Thomas into a panic that left him struggling to breathe. Brooke insisted that was not the case, but her refusal to elaborate only deepened the suspicion. As the tension spirals further in upcoming episodes, spoilers hint that the truth, when finally revealed, will create a ripple effect of emotional explosions. Liam will feel betrayed, Thomas will experience a heartbreaking setback, Ridge will blame Brooke for keeping the secret, Steffi will declare war on Hope, and Brooke, still recovering from the fainting spell, will fight harder than ever to keep her family from fracturing beyond repair. Hope's confession shook Brooke so deeply that she collapsed, but the real collapse has yet to come, because the moment the truth becomes public, every relationship on the canvas may be pushed to its breaking point, setting the stage for one of the most explosive, bold, and the beautiful storylines in years. And as the chaos swelled inside the Forrester mansion, Hope felt as though the walls themselves were closing in on her, each breath tighter than the last, each heartbeat a reminder that her truth had become a living storm spinning out of control, dragging everyone she loved into its eye with no sign of relief on the horizon. Brooke watched her daughter's trembling hands, her unfocused gaze, the way her chest rose and fell in rapid, panicked bursts, and she knew Hope was seconds away from completely unraveling beneath the intensity of the pressure building around her. Brooke wanted desperately to take Hope into her arms, to shield her from the demands for answers, the accusations, the suspicious stares, but her own body was still shaky from the fainting episode and her mind still foggy with fear, making every movement feel heavier than the last. Ridge, meanwhile, paced like a man on the brink, torn between a father's instinct to protect Thomas and a husband's instinct to support Brooke, though the tension in his shoulders made one thing clear: He would not tolerate secrets much longer. Steffi stood behind Thomas, arms crossed, chin lifted, her entire posture exuding the fierce protectiveness she had honed over years of defending her family. Every second Hope remained silent only fueled Steffi's fire, and Steffi's eyes flickered between Hope and Thomas with a determination that promised she would drag the truth out, whether Hope wanted to speak or not. Hope felt the weight of Steffi's stare like a blade pressed against her skin, and though she tried to steady her breath, her voice refused to obey as a thick lump formed in her throat. The shame of what she had done, what she had confessed, hung over her like a dark cloud, especially now that Liam's name echoed through the conversation like a ghost haunting her conscience. She felt the burn of tears rising again when she imagined Liam's face, the confusion he still carried after his medical scare, the heartbreak she had inflicted even before the truth came to light. How could she destroy him all over again with this? How could she break Thomas, too, after everything he had fought to rebuild? And how could she put Brooke through the trauma of hearing the secret, a revelation so overwhelming it made her mother collapse to the floor as if Hope had reached into her chest and ripped away years of carefully guarded emotional strength? Hope's knees buckled slightly, and for a moment she feared she might faint herself. Ridge stopped pacing suddenly and demanded that Brooke stop protecting Hope and let her speak, and the tension in his voice shattered Brooke's remaining composure. She knew Ridge was right in one sense. The truth had to come out, but she also knew Ridge's temper could ignite like dry brush, and if Hope was forced to confess in front of the entire family, the fallout would be nuclear. Brooke pleaded for privacy, for time, for space, but Steffi cut her off sharply, reminding her that Hope had manipulated Thomas for years and that every time the Logans needed space, the Forresters paid the price. Thomas flinched at Steffi's words, and though his heart was pounding with fear, he didn't want Hope to feel cornered. He reached out gently, trying to touch her arm, but Hope recoiled instinctively, not because she feared him, but because she feared the heartbreak she was about to deliver straight into his hands. And that recoil, small, fleeting, barely noticeable, became the spark that ignited Steffi's fury, as Steffi interpreted it as guilt, the kind of guilt that only comes with an unforgivable act. Katie and Donna, who had arrived moments earlier, exchanged worried glances as they watched the standoff grow more volatile, sensing that something catastrophic was about to happen. Katie whispered that they should take Brooke upstairs before she fainted again, but Brooke refused to leave Hope alone with Ridge and Steffi, knowing that her daughter would be eaten alive by their accusations if she stepped out of the room. Donna tried to soothe Brooke by placing a hand on her shoulder, but Brooke's entire body was trembling with maternal fear, and the memory of collapsing in front of her daughter weighed heavily on her mind. She could still hear Hope's terrified cry echoing in her ears as everything faded to black, and the memory alone made her feel lightheaded. Hope finally mustered enough breath to speak, but the moment her lips parted, Liam entered the room. His presence hit Hope like a physical blow. He looked exhausted, pale, still recovering, but his eyes carried a desperate plea for answers. "Hope, what's going on?" he asked, his voice fragile. "Why did your mom faint? What did you tell her?" Hope's heart cracked open as she stared at him, realizing that the secret she had been trying so hard to keep from shattering his world was now staring him in the face. Brooke whispered his name gently, trying to calm him, but Liam ignored her, his eyes locked on Hope with a mixture of fear and confusion. Steffi, sensing an opportunity, stepped forward and bluntly stated that Hope had confessed something devastating to Brooke, something big enough to make Brooke collapse. Liam turned pale, his breathing unsteady, and Thomas felt his own anxiety spike as he sensed the impending collapse of whatever fragile balance Hope had tried to maintain. Hope raised a trembling hand, ready to speak, but Ridge's voice boomed across the room again, demanding clarity.
"Hope, enough.
Whatever you told your mother, tell us now." His tone carried an unspoken threat, and Hope's legs weakened further. Brooke begged him to stop, insisting that Hope wasn't ready, but Ridge snapped back, saying this wasn't about readiness, but accountability. Thomas stepped between Hope and Ridge, pleading in a soft, desperate voice for everyone to give Hope space. Steffi immediately countered that space was how Hope had manipulated Thomas before, and her words cut Thomas like a knife. He shot Steffi a wounded look, but she refused to back down, her fury too great, her instincts too sharp. Hope squeezed her eyes shut, wishing she could disappear, but when she opened them, she saw Liam, heartbroken, waiting. She saw Thomas, terrified, bracing for impact. She saw Steffi, ready to attack. She saw Ridge, demanding answers. She saw Brooke, still fragile, still pale, holding herself upright purely through love for her daughter. And something inside Hope finally cracked. She whispered, "I'm so sorry." And though the words were barely audible, they sent a shockwave through the room. Liam's eyes filled with dread. Thomas's breath caught. Steffi's mouth twisted into bitter satisfaction. But before Hope could elaborate, the pressure became too much, and she collapsed into a chair as sobs overtook her body. Brooke rushed to her side, holding her tightly, but the emotional dam had burst. Hope cried uncontrollably, her guilt spilling out in waves, her body shaking violently as the secret clawed its way back up her throat, demanding to be spoken aloud. Liam knelt beside her, begging her to look at him, to tell him what she had done, but Hope sobbed harder, unable to breathe through the weight of her confession. The room was silent except for her broken, gasping cries. Katie finally stepped in, insisting that Hope could not be forced to confess while in such emotional distress, but Steffi scoffed, claiming that Hope's tears were strategic. That accusation sent Brooke erupting in one of the fiercest defenses she had unleashed in years. "My daughter fainted me with her truth," Brooke shouted, her voice cracking. "You think these tears are manipulation? She is falling apart because she is human, and she made a mistake." Her outbursts shook the entire room, stunning even Ridge. Spoilers tease that this emotional collapse from Hope is the moment that begins unraveling the entire secret, piece by piece. Thomas, realizing Hope's pain is genuine, tries again to comfort her, but Hope, terrified of hurting him further, pulls away once more, making his heart shatter just a bit more each time. Liam, confused and hurting, fears the secret involves Thomas again, and the panic in his eyes grows with every passing second. Ridge grows more impatient. Steffi grows more aggressive. And Brooke grows more protective as her maternal instincts push her into full defensive mode. Hope tries again to speak, whispering that she never meant to devastate anyone, that she never wanted Brooke to collapse, that she never wanted the family to implode because of her choices. Her voice breaks as she says she is ashamed, that she wishes she could undo what happened, that she knows she is about to lose people she loves. And as she cries, Ridge demands again, "Hope, what did you do?" The secret is coming, inch by inch, tear by tear, and when it finally erupts, it will forever reshape Liam's future, Thomas's stability, Steffi's fury, Ridge's trust, and Brooke's role as the one person trying desperately to hold a rapidly crumbling family together after her fainting spell signaled just how dangerous Hope's truth really is. The emotional implosion has only begun, and the fallout will be nothing short of devastating. But even as Hope's sobs echoed through the mansion, bouncing off the walls like the cries of someone standing on the edge of emotional ruin, the energy in the room shifted into something far more fragile, far more explosive, as though every person present recognized that they were seconds away from witnessing a truth capable of ripping their intertwined lives into pieces that could never be put back together again. Ridge stood rigid, his jaw clenched so tightly that the muscles in his neck twitched with the effort of holding himself together, because the sight of Hope's collapse warred violently with his instinct to protect his son. Steffi's arms crossed tighter, her fingers digging into her skin as she glared at Hope with equal parts fury and suspicion, convinced more than ever that whatever Hope had done would once again send Thomas spiraling. Thomas, his breath trembling, fought the urge to kneel beside Hope just to reassure her that she wasn't alone, even if the secret she carried would break him, because the love he still felt for her refused to die, even now. Liam, however, seemed the most fragile of all, crouched beside Hope with his heart pounding so loudly he felt it in his throat, terrified of what her next words might confirm. And Brooke, steadying herself despite the dizziness that still lingered after her fainting spell, clutched Hope tightly, murmuring broken comforts as the rest of the room watched like vultures circling a wounded animal. Hope tried again to speak, but her voice dissolved into breathless gasps, and Brooke begged everyone to stop pressuring her daughter, reminding them that Hope had already confessed once, that she had already delivered the blow that made Brooke collapse. Brooke's own voice wavered as the memory hit her, a crushing wave of shock so powerful it had stolen her consciousness, and Ridge's eyes flickered with fear, because he had never seen Brooke faint before. The guilt on Hope's face painted a horrifying picture in Liam's mind, and he whispered her name repeatedly, gently, almost pleadingly, as though coaxing her out of a burning building. "Whatever it is, just tell me," he begged, but Hope shook her head helplessly, gripping Brooke's arm as if she were holding onto the last solid thing she had in a world crumbling beneath her feet.